Hey guys, good afternoon. As promised, the weekly outlook for a specific grid. I'm going to look at four different pairs, indices, commodities, etc. Um, You'll notice a few of the familiar uh, patrons in this. You've got the S&P, pound yen, dollar Swiss, and silver. Now, silver is the only one that I took a look at, excuse me, that had any sort of or that I looked at ahead of time. And the only thing I did on silver looking at it ahead of time was just verifying that we were entering a certain zone that hasn't been tested in a while and could prove to have some pretty significant moves coming out of it. The rest of it I haven't looked at. I cleaned everything up, and as I stated, I really haven't been doing much today. With all the news, with all the stuff that's going on. Personally, I'm actually currently sitting in hospital waiting rooms, so bear with me. I may cut in and out. I may have to pause as I'm getting a few strange looks, but either way, let's run through it. So we'll start with the S&P. Looking at the 4-hour charts, got some fairly, also excuse work notifications. So looking at the 4-hour, got some fairly significant levels to the upside. And a couple to the downside as well. That haven't been tested in quite a while. And again, bear with me as I go through these, because the initial pass through is just me, marking up levels. As again, I haven't looked at these. These aren't pre-planned. Doing this, you're looking at these with me. So again, bear with me as I go through and look at these levels again for the first time in a while. So got some decent support, decent resistance all over. Focusing on the immediate area, right? We've already kind of tested this high and fallen quite significantly. And if I look for the next zone that would start to provide some real significant opportunity, would likely be down there. The potential for some right there. Okay. So looking ahead to the week and some recent activities, we've got few levels of interest that could potentially be tested. You can see that we've got a nice cross right here. That's after we kind of broke this little trend here. We made a nice strong push upward, and then from there continued on to test those upper limits. If we look at what we've done already, we've come down and we've tested that 50% off the high to high and bounced nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that high to high on there just for profit target purposes, because if we do break upward, right, if we do break upward, then we've got some good potential to fill those profit target levels and push into this range here. And if you actually look at the overall move, I believe the 78.6, I think one thing that I do remember is the 78.6 has been tested. Okay, I was wrong there, sorry. What I was getting at was I thought the 78.6 was up a little bit just above these highs, but I was wrong. So if we're looking at some of these runs here, okay, so if we're looking at some of these runs here, right, you've got this zone that built itself out really nicely, right, that we haven't come back up to test. Now I've got this, if you remember this fib from a while back, right, we tested that 50 perfectly, hit profit targets, pulled back hard, and what did we get? Did we test the 38 too? We tested the 38 too. So the fib structure is still valid, and we haven't pushed up to test that negative 61.8 yet. We did retest that negative 23.6. We already blew through the ABCD. And if you look at that negative 61.8, it sits right smack dab in the middle of this zone right here from the high to high completions. So if we can push off of that high to high completion, I might look. Yeah, our ABCD, our high to high ABCD sits just below that negative 61.8 off that fib run there. All right, so we've got our high to high ABCD sitting up nicely there. And if we're looking to the downside, we've got more zones to potentially look for, right? If we capture the swing here, actually, that's not where I wanted. Hold on one second, sorry. Okay, and let's validate 78.6. Okay, that's what I wanted. And if we do hold here, then look what that fib structure gives us. If we hold that 61.8, much like the Russell chart that I posted earlier today, if we hold this 61.8, if we hold the 61.8 as the high and we start to drop back down, then we've got this zone that's really of interest. If we can push down into these levels here, maybe a drift, a wick that goes past this, tests that cross section and then takes off. Maybe we dip even lower and we test that negative 61.8 and the 61.8 off this impulse run here. But a lot to like to the downside as well. Right now, it's kind of sit and wait territory. We could very well push through. We could very well fall. And that's exactly what I wanted, right? We got that huge sell-off last night. We got a nice reaction with all the news. We got a nice bull pop coming out of those levels, and we gave a pretty perfect retracement to that overall measured move. So that was a great, setup, right? And we got that spike up to the 61.8 off of that oil inventory report. So this is why I was saying let's let the market do its thing, right? We had Bank of England, Bank of Canada. We had more CAD news this morning. We had the oil inventories report. We had all the Trump stuff from last night. So this is why you wanted to let things stabilize and give an after the fact view, because now we've got structure to both sides that we can start to target. All right, moving on. Pound yen. We are on the daily chart. What does the weekly look like? Weekly chart. Okay, let's start on the weekly with the pound yen. Haven't done this one in a while, and I know there are always willing participants here. Okay. All right, so what's this swing run look like? Okay, so we've got decent structure at the swing retracement. Both this 61.8 actually of all three decent retracements, we've got good overall structure. Okay, so I like that swing run. If we look low to low, we get a 78.6 right smack dab in the middle, which I like. Okay, now obviously this is, the higher time frame, right? This is the weekly. What do you know? We already filled the ABCD. Okay, this is great fib structure. Really, you can't ask for much else. So we get our run up. This little spike here fills our ABCD pretty perfectly, and then we come back down right into fib structure, coming off this zone here. Where's our ABCD there? Okay. So we've got, this was a pretty perfect retracement, right? Coming back out of these this zone. Let's get rid of the 50 because that doesn't matter anymore. Let's get rid of the 78.6 because that's only necessary if we drop. All right, so we got our, build out our zone of interest here. So this initial move, which gave us great fib structure, this was our target, right? This initial move here. Within that, we've already filled the negative 23.6. We've already filled the ABCD. So let's mitigate this a little bit, right? I'm going to get rid of this 61.8 off. Oh, I got rid of the wrong thing. Off the low to low, I wanted to get rid of the 61.8 and leave the 78.6 because it was right at the top of that zone that we were looking at. So let's clear this out and we'll make our area of interest just a little bit smaller. Okay, if we take this little run that we've been on, it's not super smooth. Would ideally have it a little bit cleaner. What's it look like from here? It's a little better. Okay. So we're setting up for some decisions on the pound yen. We are setting up for, okay, there we go. Now let's move down to our daily. Now so we've got our higher time frame targets, right? If we can break well above all of this structure and just push through and test, ideally, right, would just kind of drift up and test right around here. That'd be great. That'd be ideal. But there's no way of knowing that that's going to happen exactly. And on the lower time frames, lower in this case being the daily, here's our ABCD, some decent structure. Okay, so we've got our bull ABCD, and if we get our tracement up, really the first area, because there's nothing else really around it, around this 50 here, I'm going to get rid of it because it's not something that's super strong to me right now. What I'm interested in is if we can push up and test these areas, right? This level here, because there's a lot to like about those zones. Obviously, this looks like a fairly good retracement where we front ran it, so we never really filled it. Yeah. So right now, pushing into these levels is really going to tell us a lot, right? If we continue upward, then we can start to build out some fib structure to the upside. However, if we do hold at the 78.6 and kind of where that 50 was off this impulse run, let's change this to all purple so it stands out. Then you've got your targets to the downside. So I'm gonna get rid of this and just leave the 78.6. Then you've got your targets to the downside. If we can fill here and show some bears coming out of it, right? We've got decent resistance currently where we're testing. But outside of that, this is so much stronger. So I'd really ideally like to see a test up in this area right here, before looking short. But this could very well hold this shorter term structure here. So this could very well hold. And then if that's the case, then you look down here for your profit targets as well as reversal points. Moving on. Oh, silver. Wasn't expecting that one to pop up next. Okay, so silver. Now I know that there probably aren't many silver traders. If you are, you're probably looking at it on Nadex. But I think there is going to be some really good opportunity for some weekly contracts if you are trading silver on Nadex coming up in the near future. So let's just give some overall structure. All right. So what we're looking at is if you look at this overall run up, we've got this 78.6 as a real low target, right? As if we dip as low as we possibly could, that 78.6 is in play. And if you look at where it sits, it's right within a beautiful little supply zone. Now, I'm not anticipating that we're going to fill all the way down to that 78.6. That's a huge run to consider. But by the end of next week, that's certainly not out of the question. If you look at some of the other structure that's held up, we fill that 78.6 to the upside, and our negative 23.6 is just below it. So now that we've broken kind of below this structure, this is going to be an area to look for tests. I'm going to plot this a little darker just so that I can start to build out some additional structure within. And now if you look at what's kind of establishing itself on the higher of the low time frames, if that makes sense. We've got that negative 23.6 if we can push past this resistance that we're on. Negative 23.6 being the, right, so we filled that low to low, got the test of the 50, retested the structure that we had broken and pushed down to the negative 23.6, right at that 1560 level, right? That would be the ideal target if we can push down below this resistance we're currently at. And then looking even further, if we push down to this negative 61.8 off the low to low, that sets us up for a test of that 78.6. So it'll be real interesting to see what it does here. I'm not necessarily looking for the first test here. What I am looking for is maybe something like this, where we come down, test these levels, get a fairly measured response out of it, and then come back, and then we look long there once we break out, come back and retest if we can get a measured move out of that zone. And if we continue to blow past it, then I would look for the same right around that 61.8. What did I miss? The dollar Swiss. So looking at the dollar Swiss, we have just continued to pile onto this crazy consolidation. You can see how little has been accomplished in terms of price movement over the last couple of months on the dollar Swiss. And again, just bear with me. I'm trying to get some sort of levels established. So we're starting to approach decision time levels to the upside, right? So if we I didn't do that right. Okay. Get rid of the 78.6. So you can see that this is obviously the zone of interest to the upside. If we can eventually push up past this zone, and the ABCD sits right smack dab in the middle, so this would be looking towards a break of these levels, a retest, and then a push upward. Now this is the weekly chart, so this is a fairly, it's potentially a long time away. But what isn't is, let's go down to the daily actually and find the proper anchor. What isn't too far away is a potential test of these levels. And then again, you can see that the higher time frame zone that we're looking to push past is right at the second profit target for this high to high. After we broke out of this zone, after we broke out of this zone, so this was a nice run up, then a nice retracement, and then you can see that these levels have held fairly decently. So what I'll be looking for here is a continuation up past these levels, right? This is going to be first test because this run down here, that's the 78.6, which has filled a couple of times, and it'll be real interesting to see what it decides to do this third test if we can get up there. So this will be the first tell. If we can push up past this and then breach these higher time frame levels, then come back and retest, you might give yourself something like that as a low, right? If we can come up and retest and then come back and test right here, that might be an interesting trend line to keep. Obviously, as we make new highs, build out your fib structure. But this is going to be the first level that I'm looking at for an area of interest. And then if we do, we never filled this 78.6 off of this high to high run. Excuse me. So off this high to high run, if we can come back and retest this area right here, then that's a real area of intrigue, especially if we drift, especially if we test this trend line kind of in the same area. Let's say like if we tested it right here, we slowly come back down and test somewhere right around here. That would really be ideal if we do push south. But this is going to be, for me, in the like tomorrow and Friday and overnight tonight, this is the area that I'm going to be watching. I probably won't do anything until it makes a decision, and then if we do get bearish again, then I'm going to want to see a break below here. But that's the big area that I'm watching, because I think that's going to determine the movement for next week. And with that concludes the weekly outlook for this week. And I will upload the chart or the grid and upload the video. And it's a bit late now, but make sure you watch the video before you try and do anything with these charts.